Welcome to Dr. Levski Gaming. My name is Sean, and today I have a few fights for you. This first fight is a Guild War fight against a charged up Satori team. The Celeste already died in the previous fight, but I knew that Satori could be potentially dangerous depending on how much energy he had. I decided to use Julius here because his shields remove Foxfire marks when they break. I've also been trying Mushy and Shroom and Zisha, and I've been thinking that Zisha will pull the health from the minions of Mushy and Shroom and Morrigan and make her ultimate do much more damage, and it seems to be working pretty well. This fight is from the same Guild War. This team is very defensive in its build, with Leon to stop AoE damage, and then Celeste and Martha to provide a lot of healing, and then Jorgen to stop the energy gain. So I had to be specific in my team build here. And I decided to use essentially the same team that I just used, except I swapped Julius for Phobos in order to control the enemy magic energy gain. And then also Phobos is really good at stunning an enemy, which is very useful. One of my favorite teams right now is this team consisting of Corvus, Morrigan, Julius, and Mushy and Shroom. And then I've been playing around with the fifth. And in this case, I decided to use Zisha to increase my survivability against the enemy Kira. Zisha will lay down the cloud, which prevents Kira from hitting for a turn, and it allows Corvus to get his altar up. And then I think she also has some of the lowest magic defense, so Zisha usually will target Kira depending on the enemy lineup. And then I wasn't worried about using magic damage against Rufus because I had Morrigan to prevent his resurrection. This is my go-to team against the Kira Blender team. I use Zisha because of her Crimson Mist ability, which makes Kira miss her second attack, and it allows Corvus to get his altar up. And then Corvus's altar and Iris's attack will generally bring Kira down, and then the rest of the team is a breeze after that. Then this is the same team I'll use against the Kira, Dorian, Fafnir team. In this case, I use Corvus to counter the enemy Corvus and Kira. But with Dorian next to Kira, I also have to add in Iris's damage to make sure she falls. And then Zisha helps pick up the remainder. This was a challenging team to take down. with Fafnir adding a lot of durability. In this case, I used Faceless to counter the enemy Luther to throw him back to his side. And then I chose to go All Eternity with Iris to try and maximize Iris's damage on the team, because I knew I needed to bring them down fast or they were going to take me down. This is one of those teams that if you don't take it down quickly, you will lose. And that's because Amira's pile of gold and Satori's Foxfire marks will basically blow up the enemy team. So in this case, I decided to go for the fart combo of Fafnir, Tristan, Artemis. And then I used Morrigan to counter the Astaroth Resurrection. And then I used Cleaver instead of Corvus because Corvus's altar was charging up the enemy team too fast, and I wanted to give time for Artemis to get her ultimate off. This team was an interesting combo of Kira and Dorian, but then also had Satori mixed in there in the middle. So I had a couple of things to worry about. So in this case, I used Julius to counter the Satori, and then Corvus and Mojo to counter the enemy Kira. And the reason for that is when she hits the altar will do a lot of damage, and then Mojo's Hex will finish her off in this case, so it works really well. And I included Jorgen to stop the enemy Galahad's energy gain in case he got crazy. This is another combo I used against Kira, Dorian, Fafnir. In this case, I used Mushy and Shroom, Mojo, and Zisha, and that was to maximize my magic damage. In this case, the altar and Mojo will provide a lot of damage to Kira, hopefully killing her before she can get any ultimate off. Also, Mushy and Shroom's minions provide more targets for Kira to hit, causing the altar to do more damage as well. In this team, the Satori and the Amira were my primary concerns. So I used Julius to counter the enemy Satori, and then I decided to use Yasmin to see if she could target the enemy Amira with lower armor. And then I used Tristan and Fafnir to buff Yasmin, and that seemed to work really, really well. This is another Satori team with Celeste to buff his magic damage. If you don't have Julius yet, you really should try and unlock him to counter the enemy Satoris. He works really, really well now. And then I also use Mushy and Shroom and Mojo to provide a lot of magic damage, and then Morrigan to counter the enemy Astaroth. This was just an interesting fight I did against myself in training to show how to counter an enemy Eternity team. So in this case, I use Iris and Daredevil next to Dorian to get through Corvus's altar without dying. And in this case, my Daredevil is only 60,000 power level versus the Corvus, which is over 100,000 power level. So Daredevil works really well, and Iris also, just standing next to Dorian will keep them alive. this team hits really hard with Kira and Ishmael doing a lot of crit damage, and actually even Galahad does a lot of crit AoE damage. So in this case, I decided to put 2 tanks in front to make sure I survive long enough for Iris to do her damage. And then I used Jorgen to slow down the energy gain of Galahad, and it worked pretty well. So if you're ever up against a team like this, you really need to stack a lot of armor in the front to survive it. Against this team, I noticed the enemy Jew, which gives my team a lot of problems usually. So here I wanted to keep him stunned as much as possible, so I used Kira with Fafnir to keep the stuns going, and then Anvari also to keep stuns going as well. And then Kira next to Dorian helps get past the enemy Corvus. This is just an interesting fight in cross-server wars. I had to watch the replay to see what happened because 3 of my backline team died seemingly instantly. But when I look at it slowly, it's Daredevil's bomb followed by Isaac's ultimate, both critting, which of course added extra pure damage from Sebastian. And they basically, the last 3 died in 1 second. So it was just an interesting fight I thought I would share. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know if there's anything you would like to see or hear me talk about in the future. Thank you.